Hello, I'm in my 30s and I have been married for just a year. I'm having a dreamy, newlywed life these days. Of course, I am having a sweet, newly worthwhile because it hasn't been a while since we got married, but it is also because I have a very affectionate and sincere person like my husband. And also because I have my husband's parents who accept me unconditionally. However, people around me are very surprised when they hear that it wasn't that smooth compared to what it is now. I want to tell you the story of the success of my marriage, so I am sending it in like this. First of all, let me tell you a little about my childhood. I was raised by my maternal grandfather. Before living with my grandfather, I used to live alone with my mother. When I was just entering elementary school while my mother was on her way home from work, she had a hit-and-run accident and passed away. I was left in the hands of my only family, my grandfather. Strangely, even now, the memories of that time are so vivid. That day, my mother promised to buy me some chicken when she came home from work. My favorite food in the world was fried chicken. I was waiting for my mom full of anticipation at the thought of eating chicken. Even though it was past 8 p.m. then 9 o'clock in the evening, my mother didn't come back home. It felt odd even at my young age. No matter how many times I called her on the phone, she didn't answer. I was so worried that I even forgot that I was hungry. Then a policeman called our house. When he hesitated and told an unbelievable story, I became blank and strangely I do not remember anything after that. All I remember is I kept looking at the watch and the door trying to control my nervousness. I can only vividly remember that scene. When I came to my senses, I was holding my grandpa's hand and going to his house. My maternal grandma had long since passed away and my grandpa was living alone. So his place wasn't that tidy. It was old. No, it was a house where there was a pile of old things someone used to discarded. At that time, my grandpa worked as a janitor. So when he came home, he had a particular body stench that permeated the air. Even though I was young, I knew that I was not in a position to say I disliked it. When I entered elementary school, I felt the cold reality that I was facing. It was the first day of school and I was the only one who came holding my grandpa's hand. From that day on, I did not have any friends. I wanted to have lots of friends. But I felt hurt when no one would play with me. Now that I think back, it was natural that I wouldn't have any friends. Other students came in tidy clothes and new backpacks. But I had a bad haircut, wearing old sweatsuits and an old used backpack with tacky pictures. Had my grandma been alive, perhaps it would have been indifferent, but what could I do? I only had my grandpa as my family. Being raised by my grandpa meant I had to give up a lot of things. Not only giving up but having nice clothes. But when we go on a school picnic, my lunch bag showed that I had no, so who would want to be my friend? Thus I played alone and read books or played with the toys my grandpa found in the trash. Because my grandpa was very thrifty in our house, he didn't buy new things but would bring things that were thrown out. However, he was good with his hand. So he was able to repair just about anything when it passed through his hands. Shamefully, I did not like living with my grandpa and I was embarrassed by him. I hated his body permeating with stench and I hated his walking around slouching back in his overstretched undershirt. By the time I reached puberty, I was feeling the worst to the extent of thinking that if I were to live like this, I wanted to be an orphan. I was a bad granddaughter. Because of me. He couldn't stop working and whenever he had free time, he even went around to pick up empty boxes. But I was not grateful to him one bit. I wanted to become successful no matter what. That was the only way to escape from this poverty-stricken environment. So I studied very hard as if my life depended on it. adult around me and beat me for studying so hard as a kid who was devoted. They praised me. But in fact, I just focused on studying out of desperation because I felt I couldn't go to college if I did not receive any scholarship. As a result, I did not get any extra tutoring or attend private academies, but became a model student, ranking first or second in the whole school. I got top scores on SAT and was able to go to Harvard College. Then on to law school with a full scholarship. I felt proud of myself to achieve it all with my efforts. However, my grandpa did not treat me any differently, even though I received a full scholarship at an Ivy League college. That day I felt somewhat hurt. At any other household, there will be a big celebration and make a big deal out of it. I wondered if my mom hadn't passed away, she would have been happy. When I thought about her, even though it was the happiest day of my life, my tears wouldn't stop. At that moment, someone rang the doorbell. Then the aroma of fried chicken hit me and my stomach started to grow, to my embarrassment. Grandpa said, "It is your favorite food, fried chicken. I don't have anything I could do for you. Why not just eat the chicken?" He wouldn't eat any chicken himself except just some coleslaw that came with it. "Grandma, please eat some too." "That's okay. I don't like chicken. I love this coleslaw. Go ahead and eat them all." I only learned later from the owner of the chicken joint that my grandpa was so happy about my acceptance at Harvard Law School that he bragged all over the neighborhood. The owner's daughter was a pound of my rivals for first or second place in school. According to him, my grandpa came all excited and shouted, "Give me the biggest fried chicken you have for my granddaughter since it is her favorite food. Also give me a lot, of course, Law." Then, I remember that day when my grandpa said he didn't like chicken and just ate the coleslaw, saying that was most delicious. It made me get choked up. I did not like him or had any memories of anything good, but oddly, after that day whenever I thought about Grandpa, I had a pang in my heart. When Grandpa said farewell to me as I was moving to a rental that nearby my college, he said, "Trudy, I am sorry that I couldn't do much for you. It's embarrassing, but I didn't know how to raise you at all. However, you could do anything well, so I had nothing I could do for you. When I think about it now, I am very grateful, but I am sorry to make you study all on your own. Please study hard and become a great officer of the law. Thank you for growing up so well under this grandpa who is not good enough." Since that day I think I grew up fast. My grandpa's every single word of sincerity hit me hard. And it made me defenseless. I swore to myself over and over that I would become a good person. And I wanted to repay my grandpa's love by becoming successful as soon as possible. Again, I studied like crazy as if my life depended on it. I did not have any time to date or enjoy college campus life. However, I have no regret. Before I studied only thinking to reach success, but at that time I studied to make my grandpa happy and become a great officer of the law. Because I had a dream every day was very meaningful and precious to me. Thanks to the scholarship, I had no tuition worries and was able to graduate from law school and prepare for my bar exam to become an officer of the law. Although I was confident in studying, preparing for the bar was much more challenging than I thought. And it was very lonely. Up to that time I was living by myself. Since it was near my grandpa's birthday, I decided to go back home. Usually my grandpa would tell me on the phone, "You don't need to come home, use the time to study more for your bar exam. It's okay with me. Tell me if you need money at any time." So I did not call him to let him know I was coming, and I bought some pork chops and wine and went home to find out that my grandpa was hospitalized but did not tell me. 2 weeks prior, He slipped and fell on the street while sweeping and broke his hip bones and needed surgery. But he didn't want to bother my studying, so he deferred his surgery. I can't believe you. You can't defer something like that. Grandpa, you're not helping me when you do that. You're making me a bad granddaughter. But it will interfere with your studies. How could I become a problem rather than any help for you? Grandpa, if I was hospitalized, like you, and because I feel sorry to worry you so I don't contact you and don't get the surgery, how would that make you feel? I mean, that's not something to feel sorry about. See, do you know how shocked I was when I learned about you? If that owner of the chicken joint did not tell me, how could I concentrate on any studying because I didn't know where you were? Okay, stop scolding me. I am so happy to see you. But are you going to continue scolding me? It's because I feel so bad. That's why. Don't feel bad. Hey, my beloved granddaughter, how's your studying going? Should I buy you your favorite fried chicken tomorrow? I hadn't seen my grandpa for a while, but he looked a lot thinner, but he kept smiling and talked to me tenderly. When I was young, I thought my grandpa was scary and not so talkative, but now he looked more like a child and a very affectionate person. His surgery went well despite my worries. But because of his age, we decided to have him stay in the hospital as long as possible. My grandpa was worried about the high hospital bills and wanted to be discharged earlier. But I told him no one at home could take care of him. And I insisted that he needed to stay in the hospital. Okay, I never thought that you are stubborn, but now I see you take after your mother for being so stubborn. I lose. You won. So hurry up and go back to your studies. Grandpa, you promised don't get discharged from us to save money if your condition becomes worse. That's more expensive. Okay. I begged them earnestly and went back to college. I studied until late at the law library and went back to my apartment when I felt as if someone was following me. When I approached the narrow street where my studio was, I started to get scared. I thought it might be safer if I called someone on the phone and looked at the phone directory. But I had no one I could call because I had only been studying. I couldn't call my grandpa exactly either. So I just started to run fast. The guy who was following me started to run after me when I began running. I was sure that it was a criminal, so I didn't want him to know my place, so I kept running to the police station in the neighborhood. Help me, some criminal is following me. I ran out of my breath as I entered the police station and shouted. Then a young-looking police officer came up to me and asked if I was okay. He went outside to look for the suspicious man. After about 5 minutes, he came back in and handed me a glass of water, and tried to calm me down, saying I was safe. Also, he kindly accompanied me to my place and gave me his phone number to call in advance when I was ready to come. He said that he would meet me at the bus station and escort me home. I felt so grateful and so safe. That is the person who became my husband. After that incident, I did not walk late at night. My husband was worried about me, so even on his days off, he would patrol the streets in my neighborhood at night on purpose. Unbelievably, a thief ransacked my studio where there was nothing to take and I called 911 being so frightened. Amazingly, it was my husband who took the call and came to my place. That's how it led us to become a couple. He always checked on me who was alone in the apartment and he paid close attention to me. I became interested in him and we started to date formally. My husband had the experience of preparing for his police examination. So he helped me in many ways prepare for my bar exam. By that time, my grandpa was discharged from the hospital despite my protest. He insisted on going back to working as a janitor. I couldn't leave my grandma alone, so I decided to go back home to live with him. Of course he was against my moving back home. That's cramped here and messy, so it won't be helpful for your study here. So you should go back to your place. Yeah. So it's about time to clean up this place. Why are you causing so much trouble by suddenly moving back here? I'm fine now that I got my surgery, so listen to your grandpa. It's fine with me too. If we live apart, I worry about you too much, so I can't concentrate on studying. My grandpa had to fall into this stubbornness because of me. Even though he said he couldn't stand living with me, I saw his pleased face as he turned his back on me. After I moved back. Ironically, I felt much better studying and dating at the same time. As a result, I passed my bar exam. My grandpa and my husband were so happy at the news. But the person who was the happiest was me. I was happy that I would be able to make my grandpa live a better life, and I could talk about our getting married to my husband. So I felt like I finished the biggest homework in my life. I still had the anxiety to go for additional studies to specialize in several legal areas, but my husband proposed to me formally. Even though I was doing additional legal training, my husband told me that he wanted to marry me as quickly as possible. We had been dating for about 3 years then. I didn't think we needed to delay any longer, so I said yes. However, there was a big obstacle that was unexpected for us to get married. It was my future mother-in-law's objection to our marriage. The reason for my objection was because of my family background. I was raised by my grandpa without my parent. She also did not like my grandpa's occupation as a janitor either. Even though she passed a bar, you can't ignore how she grew up. I don't want a smart daughter-in-law, but on average well-raised a daughter-in-law with good manners. That way she would make a good wife for you. When I heard from my husband that she objected to me, I thought if I act properly and have her as I should approve of me. However, when I want to meet her for the first time, I realized how stupid I was to think like that. I'm sorry to put it this way. But I don't want a daughter-in-law with a professional occupation, but a person who grew up in a stable family who learned from seeing a lot. Moreover, having an in-law as a janitor bothers me. Anyhow, I am against this marriage. Mom, she is very well-mannered and has a good personality. It's not right to bring up her grandpa's occupation as an excuse to object to our marriage. I know you probably think I am being too materialistic, but in time you'll understand how I feel. Even though these days there are a lot of talks about conflicts between the mother-in-law and son-in-law, you should have parents-in-law. When your father became a policeman, your maternal grandpa became a great supporter of your father's career. Even if her father does not offer any support, having normal parents-in-law will give you a lot of help down the line. I was at loss for words when she brought up that my husband needed to have a parent-in-law. I had my grandpa, but because I had no parent, I had nothing to say at that moment. As she said, my grandpa couldn't be of any help to my husband, and that broke my heart. Because I had passed the bar and I was going for a specialized legal field. I thought my qualification was not bad. I felt that if I was good enough, it would cover any situation, but I didn't expect to hear such reasoning at all. My husband begged me to think nothing else since he was going to persuade his mom. When I went home, my grandpa saw me looking depressed after having met my future mother-in-law. Like the time when I got admitted to Harvard College, he did not say a word to me. He just went and bought me my favorite food, fried chicken, which was the only thing he knew how to make me happy. However, I did not eat the chicken that day. When I saw my grandpa, I would choke up so that I couldn't swallow the chicken. As if my grandpa knew how I felt, my grandpa went to see my husband and heard everything from him. Then, for all this time he said he couldn't throw all those piles of stuff at home all cleared out of his place. He must have strained himself and become ill. When I asked you to move that stuff, you refused, But now why did you do that all by yourself? The doctor told you not to overdo it. I thought if I cleaned up, I would feel better. What happened? However, my grandpa would not say a word after that. I think he thought I would get hurt if he said anything. Then one day my husband sent an SOS to his father, whom he respected, and asked my grandpa and me to have dinner together. Of course, it included his mother, who objected to me. For my husband, his mother could never disobey his dad. And after his father heard about what happened to his son, he scolded his mom for discriminating against a person for his occupation, and asked us to have dinner casually with them. On the other hand, because meeting his mom was so traumatic, I didn't want to go out to meet them. It was my grandpa who said, "Why should you feel any less? Go and meet with them and say anything you want. I'll be by your side." So I had to go reluctantly, and it became a meeting of both sides of the family. Right, that day I didn't get to say anything, but even if I don't get to marry, I will say everything that I want to say. I wanted in telling myself that. When we went to the restaurant, my husband and his family hadn't arrived yet, so my grandpa and I sat in a room by ourselves. Then I saw my grandpa sitting so stiffly, very nervous. When I saw him like that, my heart ached so much. "Grandpa, you told me to be confident and say whatever I wanted to say, but why are you trembling so much?" "Me, I'm not nervous." "What do you mean, you are all stiff? What are you talking about? I am not." "These people, why don't they keep time?" Right then the door opened, and my husband and his family came in. I could tell that his mom didn't want to come, and her face looked grim. At that moment I gave up thinking that it was impossible to get married. Suddenly I felt warmth from my grandpa's also hands on my hand. As he said that he would be by my side, it could be felt through his warmth of his. Then something happened that was unexpected. My father-in-law, who arrived last, saw my grandpa and showed that he was very surprised. Then suddenly, he fell to his knees in front of my grandpa. Even my grandpa looked confused, but my father-in-law said that in his trembling voice, "Don't you remember me? When I was my son's age, I was looking through a pile of garbage to find my ID and my exam entrance ticket." "Oh, that very skinny young man who looked like someone starved for days." "Yes, that was me. You looked all through so much garbage and found that for me, and even gave me the cab fare so that I wouldn't be late for my exam." "Yes, I do remember. How is it that I get to meet you here with all the people? So did you take the exam?" "Okay. Yes, thanks to you, I was able to finish my exam and pass, so I was able to become a police officer and live well." "That's great. For some reason when I saw your son, I did think of him often. I thought perhaps it was because he is a policeman. I thought he looked like you a bit. It's a small world." As my grandpa said, it was amazing. My father-in-law almost gave up taking the exam that day. However, my grandpa told them to try to the end as a man. He should not give up so easily, and poured all the piled up trash all over the street again and found the entrance ticket and ID. Then Grandpa told him, "As you can see, I'm a janitor. I feel great when I clean up all the dirty garbage off the street. You should become a janitor who cleans up this dirty world. If the world begins clean, how proud would you become?" My father-in-law said that he never forgot my grandpa's words for not even a minute. As he got promoted, there were many temptations, but my grandpa's words were like the protective armor against that. That day, my mother-in-law apologized to me. She said that I grew up learning nothing because I had no family. She was proud that I was raised by a great man like my grandpa, and I even passed that difficult exam like the bar, and who could object to a daughter-in-law like me saying she was sorry and grateful to me several times. After that day, everything changed. My parents-in-law say they didn't need me to prepare anything for the wedding and told me to just concentrate on my training. The following month, after I finished my specialized legal training, we had our wedding. My mother-in-law treated me so well that people missed occurring for my own. My father-in-law would go around bragging about me continuously that I would become so embarrassed. My grandpa sat at the family's head table as my only family member who looked at me pleased with tears in his eyes. I still can't forget the bright smile on his wrinkled face. I thought I was the unhappiest person in the world when I was sent to my grandpa's house after my mother's sudden death. But in fact, it was something to be most grateful for because it was my grandpa. To my shame, I had never told my grandpa I loved him. At puberty, I had no such mind, and as an adult, I was just embarrassed to say it. But strangely, I felt that I would regret it if I didn't tell him so on my wedding day. So I was going to say it just before we left for our honeymoon. Trudy, use this on your honeymoon. Grandpa approached me first and handed me an envelope. On the envelope, it was written, "My beloved granddaughter, congratulations on your wedding. I love you very much. Your grandpa." The moment I saw him writing, all my emotions suddenly rushed out like a storm that I burst into tears. Then my tears triggered from a person to a person like dominoes, and soon everyone at the wedding ended up crying. To this day, whenever we have a family function, my grandpa, along with other family members, talks about that day. That's having something to remember and having a relationship, right? Recently I become an assistant district attorney. I feel sorry for my husband who can't enjoy our newlywed because the bride is busy reading so many cases every day. Like my grandpa, I want to become a janitor who cleans up this dirty world, and with that mission in mind, I am trying my best even though I am just a novice. My grandpa still brings me my favorite food, fried chicken, whenever he comes over to our house. When I joke that he should bring his grandson-in-law's favorite food too, but he says that to him there is only me. That's my grandpa. He is now 90 years old this year. I wish for nothing else except that my grandpa will be by my side as long as possible, just like now. I hope that I could eat the fried chicken that my grandpa buys for me for a long time. I said that this story was about the success story of my marriage, but I ended up talking mostly about my grandpa. Lastly, I love you, Grandpa. I respect you the most in this whole world. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope all your days will be happy and thankful. Please cheer for me and write your comments of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscription is a big help to me. Have a wonderful day.